Welcome to another Parallel Project Training podcast. My name's Ruth Phillips. We're recording a podcast today on the APM PMQ syllabus that is being used on exams from September 2024. I'm here with one of our senior trainers, Lisa Regan, and we're going to be talking to you about the business case. Welcome to the podcast, Lisa.
Hi, Ruth. Great to be here and looking forward to talking about the business case.
The business case is pretty fundamental to a project. Looking at the syllabus, the APM are making sure that we're understanding that a business case is the justification for the initiation, investment, and or continuation of a project. Before we start talking about some of the other learning outcomes, let's just do a summary of what the business case is, what are its major contents. So if I was a project manager that was being asked to put a business case together, I'd know what would go in it. Lisa, give me some guidance on that. What goes into a business case?
Okay, contents of a business case. Benefits. You've got to talk about benefits in the business case because it's that one document that follows the whole project all the way through the concept definition, deployment, transition into the extended life cycle. Benefits have got to be in there. Absolutely. Because it's the justification. That's the key phrase. Keep coming back to why are we doing it? And as the project's progressing, why are we still doing it?
That's really interesting that you mentioned the benefits, because a lot of the things that we look at are within the project life cycle, but this is the one set of information that extends way past the end of the project as we go into that benefits realization phase. So it justifies why we're doing this, and we've got to make sure that we've got a good understanding of that.
Absolutely. What else have we got in the business case? Options. Starting with probably a handful of options. Through the concept phase, you would discount some of those options. So you'd say, for example, this one's too expensive, this one we don't have the resources for, this one doesn't fit with the organisation strategy, and you end up with the one way of delivering it in the business case. This is the option that we've chosen. This is the way we're going to deliver the project.
The options are really interesting, actually, because quite often we're told, make sure you include the do nothing option, because that's a really good justification for why you've got to do something. But I've seen some project business cases where they've almost made up options just to make sure that they've got enough different things to consider. I like that idea of paring them down and discounting them as you know more about the project and what's going to be feasible.
Yeah, it's always good to show that you've thought, maybe we should try this, maybe we should try that. No, this is what we've decided on.
It's good to think around what that potential approach and solution should be, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about benefits, we've talked about options, scope, some mention of what's in and what's out of scope. We're still talking high level because we're in the concept phase, but if there's anything that's obviously not going to be, make some mention of it. What about success criteria? Yeah, how are we going to be measured at the end of the project? How do you know whether you've done a good job or not when you get to the end?
Yeah.
So mention the usual time, cost and quality. There should be some overview of the main risks. We're not talking about a risk analysis at this stage. We're just talking about high level. Yeah.
It's what I might call the showstoppers, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You really want to know, because the business case is all about the justification and the viability of the project, you really want to know if there's anything that really could be an absolute blocker. So it's not about that granularity. It is that high level, big picture, the showstoppers.
Yeah, the final thing I haven't mentioned is cost. I should have gone there, shouldn't I? Cost, so what investment is going to be needed, because we need to know what we're asking for, don't we? And this is what we're doing with the outline business case. We're saying, please, can we have the investment to take the project forward?
We sometimes talk about a 5-case model.
Yes.
So how does that relate to the business case?
Okay, so the 5-case model is a structured way of talking about the contents. The overview that I gave them, we were talking about specific benefits, scope, risks. The 5-case is a recognised method of structuring the business case and the things that are in it. So let's start from the top. The strategy is in the 5-case. How does your project contribute to the organisation's wider strategy? For example, if you've got a push at the moment on being sustainable, how does this project contribute to sustainability? It's as simple as that.
That's so important, because there's no point in making an investment in our project if it's going to take the organisation in a different direction than the corporate direction.
So strategy comes into the 5-case. The economic case comes into it. So is the project value for money for your organisation?
Right.
There might be some kind of return on investment or investment appraisal in your economic case. What we're trying to do in the business case is persuade someone that the project is worthwhile.
And also do our due diligence to prove that it really is.
So we've dealt with strategy, we've dealt with the economic case. The commercial case is the project actually attractive to people out there in the wider world? What would the marketplace, is there a certain gap that you're trying to fill, or are you building on an existing offer? Similar to the economic case, but more from an internal point of view, the financial case, is it actually affordable? What's the situation within your organisation? What are the priorities? And have you got the resources? Have you got the funding to deliver this project?
Yeah.
So we're nearly there with the 5 case. We've been through 4. The final one is the management case, and for me, this is the bigger part of the 5 case. Things like roles and responsibilities. Who's going to do what on the project? What life cycle you're going to use. It's more of a formal delineation. These tick boxes, have you mentioned these 5 key items?
I think it's really useful because it gets you to think around all of the different angles on the business case and make sure that you haven't forgotten anything.
That's a summary of the 5 case.
Okay, so we've got our business case, then it's this documented justification for the project. We've talked about the contents of it, but largely it's all about what we're going to be doing on the project. How much is that going to cost? What are the benefits of doing it? What may be the key risks involved in that? And there's this 5 case model that can help us with that layout and documentation. So let's have a look at the 2 learning outcomes then in the APM PMQ syllabus. So the first one is about knowledge of the tools and techniques that are used to determine factors which influence and impact on that business case. And they've specifically identified 3 tools and techniques: PESTLE, SWOT and VUCA. Let's have a look at each one of these in turn. Let's take SWOT first of all. Lovely acronym. What does it actually stand for?
So SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. It's quite a well-known acronym, is SWOT. People are familiar with it. SWOT analysis, it's the first thing you go to in your kind of project kickoff meeting. Get people around the table. Let's talk about what the strengths and weaknesses are of our project. What are the good things? Have we got the right amount of people available? What are the weaknesses? And be open and honest enough to be able to admit we might be struggling in this area. The second half of SWOT always brings me back to the classification of risk. A positive risk is an opportunity, a negative risk is a threat.
And that's something we don't necessarily think about. We've got another podcast on risk management, and one of the first things we talk about there is that actually risks can be positive opportunities as much as negative threats. I like the way that that's picked up in SWOT.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like the way that SWOT breaks down as well into the internal and the external. That's why it makes it a really good model, and it's stood the test of time. Let's have a look at PESTLE then. This is a much longer acronym. So what does PESTLE stand for?
So PESTLE talks about the external environment. SWOT is more of let's just look at the project as it stands. PESTLE, you start to look at the wider world. So the acronym itself stands for political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental. I'll give a quick example of each one just to help put it into context. So political, from a political perspective, what's going to influence and impact your project? It could be a brand new government coming along. If the government completely changes, funding rules change, priorities change.
Okay, so on to the E then.
Economic. So economic, it's more about things like exchange rates moving, cost of living crisis. How is that going to impact on your project? Right. Third one is sociological. This really is casting the net wide. People are talking about work-life balance. So the people on your project, what are they expecting? But other things come into this, like the aging population. Is your project delivering something that's going to help that part of society? So
technological is the key now.
Technological is always a hot topic. The hot topic's got to be AI. How is AI going to impact on your project delivery? Can you use it for the good? Can you use it to enhance what you're delivering? So legal is the L. So on projects, we are bound by laws and regulations for sure. Health and safety is the one that always comes into it when you think about legal impacts on projects. But it's not just health and safety. It could be things like employment law, couldn't it? Could be GDPR. All those kind of things could have an impact. So final one in PESTLE is environmental. So what kind of impact is the environment going to have on your project? These days, we talk a lot about corporate social responsibility. So what are we doing as an organisation to give something back?
There's a huge amount in PESTLE then that we can use. It's a good model because it really does draw out loads of factors that you possibly wouldn't have thought about straight away.
Exactly what I was going to say. That's things that sometimes you think, hang on a minute, that would have an impact on my project. Makes you look outside of the window, not just consider your own project.
So that's PESTLE and SWOT. And the last one then is VUCA. What's VUCA all about, and how does that help us determine things that might impact on our business case?
VUCA is the new kid on the block. It came from the military when they were trying to describe the fog of war. So VUCA is about trying to put a framework on things that are actually quite unpredictable. So V is for volatile.
Yeah.
U is for uncertain. C is for complex, and A is for ambiguous.
Okay.
With VUCA, we're taking it one step further than SWOT and PESTLE. SWOT is locally. Yeah. PESTLE is looking out the window. VUCA is getting your telescope out. So, for example, if we're talking about the market, is the marketplace volatile? Yeah. Could something just come along and upset the whole way that you work overnight? Volatile is the speed of change, whereas being uncertain is you're not able to predict what's going to happen. So it's not that it's fast or slow, the change, it's the fact that it's not possible to predict it.
Right. All of these things that we're talking about here really fall into the risk of doing this project. You know, if this environment that this project is going to launch into is so volatile, so uncertain, maybe we should question, should we actually do this? Is it worth doing it? Are we likely to get the benefits, or is this just going to be a money pit that we're get funds into?
So we've done volatile, we've done uncertain. Complex is looking at the market and saying, for example, how many other players are there? How many different cultures have you got to deal with? How many different working environments? How many different laws have you got to deal with? If you're working across multiple countries or multiple continents, it can get really complex to have to run a project in that environment. And then finally, things being ambiguous. So ambiguous means there are no simple answers out there. Yeah, I'm sure most of us can relate to this. It's not as easy as just flicking a switch and saying, yes, we've solved that problem. Sometimes there are no simple answers to the problems that you have on projects.
I think VUCA is a really interesting model. As you said, it is a bit different from the other two. When I do that analysis around VUCA, might that affect the way that I structure my project? Might I be more inclined to use, for example, an iterative project life cycle if I'm in a more uncertain and complex environment, because I'm not able to determine everything up front and then plan it out?
Absolutely. The unpredictability is absolutely more suited to the iterative way of working, because you're doing that development over time. You're not setting things in stone.
That's really helpful. We've had a good discussion about that first learning outcome. The second learning outcome is about the fact that our business case is dynamic. It says we've got to understand the importance of regularly reviewing the impact of any changes in a project to the business case, and know that the business case forms the baseline for the project. There's quite a lot to unpick there. So we talked right at the beginning about creating our business case, working on it during concept and narrowing down options, etc. So how do I actually get to a baseline with my business case? What has to happen there?
We talked about putting the business case together in the concept phase. When we move into definition, the business case is firmed up by the detail that's in the PMP. So the PMP and the business case are baselined at the end of the definition phase.
Right.
So you're saying at that point in time, when you move into deployment, anything that changes has got to go through change control in the linear life cycle. Obviously not the same in the iterative way of working, because changes are constant. But it is important, as the learning outcome says, that we think about what impact any change has. So when a change request comes through, we must go back to the business case and say, what does this change mean for the business case? Its business case should not be a document that you just put on the shelf and leave it till the end of the project and then open it up again and go, we've been successful.
Oh, look.
This is what we should have done. So it definitely is a document that you should be reviewing, not only when changes come through, but more formally, every time you have a stage meeting on your project. It should be part of the project manager's toolkit that you bring out and you say, this is the progress we've made. What does this mean for the business case? Is it still valid? Yeah,
absolutely. Sometimes people think that they should only review the business case when they know that things have consciously changed. But of course, as we're going through our project, even if we're in Project Utopia where everything is going perfectly, we're still spending money. We're still on the path to realising benefits. So things are changing, even if they are changing according to our plan. So it's so important to keep reviewing it. In the syllabus, it says, understand it as the justification for initiation, investment, and or continuation of a project. So we really need to check at each stage gate, should we still carry on with this?
Yeah.
That continued justification.
Absolutely, because if worst case comes and you can't deliver the benefits, you might have to stop the project.
The achievement of those benefits is the reason why we're doing this. The business case really is that sort of driving force as we go through the project. Yeah, we've covered everything that the syllabus item talks about there. I think the business case is an interesting topic. It's linked to so many other things, not least benefits management, because as we've said, that's a large part of the business case. So we've got another podcast that talks about that. But for the moment, I think we're all done on the business case. So thank you very much, Lisa.
Thanks, Ruth. No problem.
Thank you.